folks, welcome back to my channel, and today, as you can see, we're going to talk about animal tarot decks and finding the one for you. I'd like to start by saying that this video was one that was asked for maybe several years back now, give or take. I'm not sure if it's something that is wanted or needed in the present moment, but I'm going to go ahead and put a little something out there anyway for those wanting to hear my thoughts or tips regarding this. And I want to be clear that this video in particular is really oriented at people newer to animal tarot decks, those struggling to find one that works for them despite wanting one, or those who want to deepen their animal medicine studies through an animal tarot deck. If one of those three things don't apply, unless you just really love watching my videos, this may not be a video for you. So I just want to put that out there. There are different reasons for wanting an animal deck in the first place as our visual in tarot. So I'd like to start by saying that it's really worthwhile considering what your reason is before even diving into this. Is your reason simply that you love animals and would find it fun or inviting for them to be in your deck in replacement of people or, abstract visuals? Are you learning the tarot and the aforementioned applies? Or do you have a desire to work more and deepen your understanding and work with animal medicine and animal studies, as well as enjoying the tarot aspect? Finally, I'd say maybe consider how new you are to the tarot or how well versed you feel with the foundation of the tarot meanings within whichever way you choose to work with the tarot or whatever model you work with. And the reason I encourage this reflection is because some decks will rely more on what you know about the animal or what you're willing to learn about them than others. Some won't depict the animal doing something that really obviously suggests to everyone the meaning of the card, and they will rely on that existing understanding of, as I say, knowledge of the animals, your existing understanding of that tarot card, or your intuition. Before we jump in, just the reminders portion. This is a gentle guide and it's meant only for those wanting it. It's also only my opinion and experience, which, what can you expect if you're hanging out on my channel? There's no set method to whether a deck vibes with us or not. I know this from personal experience as well. Sometimes we research tons and we get the deck and it's kind of a flop. And other times we may get a spur of the moment purchase, or we get gifted something that otherwise we would never have bought, and it's really, really connective for us. What I'm saying is basically it's common sense. This is just an offering for those interested, and take it or leave it. I've separated this video into kind of three key explorations, which then have their own mini sections in them. But overall, I feel like I have prepared this in a somewhat concise manner. We will see, however. Let's start with if you're learning the tarot and the animals are simply your preference over people. And this is really easily supported if you're learning under the Rider-Waite-Smith system or the Marseille system, because I know 100% there are definitely animal themed decks in both of these categories. I really don't know regarding the Thoth. I also only have Rider-Waite-Smith examples, but these are decks that I have found that I own that are almost clones for the system. The only thing that they're doing is they're replacing the people with animals when they're depicted. If you're not familiar with the term clone, I will go into this quickly before I start showing you anything. Clones basically means that it runs heavily, if not the same, in line with the depiction of the traditional version of that deck. So the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith is what I'm going to show you, and then some clone examples. Some clones will take more artistic license than others. So going for something pretty close may be helpful to learners, especially if you're using a book that discusses the imagery, which a lot will do. There will be differences. Things like colours or symbols may be changed, and so this will all be a factor. But I can safely say now that a really good portion of Rider-Waite-Smith books and clone or clone type animal decks will work really well together. There's sort of some variation on how often people use the term clone, just based on how similar the depiction is. Otherwise they're sort of clone-ish. I don't really have a word for that, but I do have several what I would call very close clones to show you an example of. I'm going to show you the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial. I'm going to show you the Pagan Cats Tarot and the Unicorn Tarot, and those will bring me on to another point later on. But for now, here's some examples of what I mean between the animal decks and then the depiction in the Rider-Waite-Smith. It's very clear to see, but just in case, from left to right, Rider-Waite-Smith, the Unicorn Tarot, Pagan Cats Tarot. Yes, unicorns are mystical animals, but this is a really clear example of a clone, not on colours, as I say, and some of the symbology may be missed out, but for the bulk of it, you can see it. And then the Pagan Cats Tarot takes a little bit more license artistically, but is still something that I would consider very clone-ish. But these two, you can see those symbols are exactly the same. So that's the Hierophant. Then we've got the Seven of Cups. And again, the unicorn one being super, super close. And I mean, the cat one's not too far off, although the cat is sleeping on the job. And then finally the Four of Wands, which again, I love the depiction, and it's very clear, you know, this celebratory wreath going across it feels almost identical in all of them. There's good stuff going on in these. They're all very clear. As I say, the Tarot of Pagan Cats does take a little bit more artistic license. A few of the cards are a little bit more out there, but mostly it's easy and simple enough to link them for a beginner, I believe, to a book. Just to show you a few more, I've got some examples that are still in line with Rider-Waite-Smith, but beginning to implement some changes, whether that's to titles, broader visual deviations and such. This is the Crow Tarot, and to be honest, I think this could go more in the clone category, so I've just pulled out a couple of cards for you to be able to see what I mean. So again, very, very familiar to the Rider-Waite-Smith. Next up is the Oak, Ash and Thorn, and this one is, we won't use the term clone-ish, we'll use the term influence. So this one is very clearly influenced by the Rider-Waite-Smith. And some of the depictions are incredibly similar, but some of them deviate a little bit more. And so whilst I don't think this would be a hard deck, it's maybe not as easy to pick up as one of the first few. And finally, the Mystical Cats Tarot, which is one that when I returned to tarot and I decided to learn the Rider-Waite-Smith, because that's not how I learned, I actually used this deck. So I know, at least for me, my experience was this was a really good beginner deck. It's very Rider-Waite-Smith influence, but as you can see, visually it's not a clone, but they depict the same meaning in their messages, if that makes sense. So you're not seeing the same visual, but the visual tells a similar story. But you do have renames in this deck, both in the majors and in the suit. So this, instead of justice, is consequences, and then it's got elemental pools instead of pentacles, you've got earth. Instead of cups, you've got sea. And you can see they're still dreaming of fabulous things in the Nine of Cups. There's a lot of sort of emotional fulfillment dreaming going on here. and then fire is your wands, and sky is your swords. But another really good beginner deck, but as I say, not one that's a Rider-Waite-Smith clone per se. You can use Rider-Waite-Smith books with this deck, because I did, but sometimes you're going to then be encouraged to use your own storytelling, your own intuition, and also this comes with a really good book, so there's that as well. On to my next point. It's really about the animals in the deck. So are you wanting a mixture of animals, or a deck that's themed around just the one? When it's just the one animal, I find usually the emphasis is on the visual depiction, as the animal remains the same. So the creator then is often looking to display the meaning of the cards very visually, very much in their body language, very much in the scene. Again, not always, and nothing I say suggests it's ever a rule, but the general rule of thumb in my experience is this. And as you see, you could see that from the cat tarots and the crow tarot. It's all very much in the story that's being woven by what they are doing, and not anything usually very specific to said animal. When there's a mixture of animals, they may very well still do this. They may rely on you knowing more about the animal, and that will vary from deck to deck. And all that means is really looking at the imagery of some of the cards and seeing if they make sense to you. If you feel their behaviour, body language, or the scenery speaks to you, can you read from what you are seeing? Some of the animal decks the animals are depicted almost stationary in their body language, and those especially are some of the ones where it really calls on your knowledge of the animal or some pre-existing understanding of tarot. Just a brief example of this is the Animal Wisdom Tarot, although I believe this has been renamed and then brought out again. It's exactly the same as far as I understand it, but with a new name. Some of these feel more, I guess, storytelling, and some of them are a little bit more stationary. As I say, the animals are still doing something. But if you're not familiar with what the Six of Branches is, again, branches is wands because this is another that has renames, this may not be enough to speak to you about what's going on. Same for the 5, whereas the 4, we've got, again, that very, very clear wreath, celebratory kind of thing going on. The 8 of Fossils, so Pentacles, it's clear that the beaver is doing something here, whereas the 7, again, we've pretty much rely on what we know, either about deer or the 7. And the 9 and 8 as well. And they are just some examples, and people will have different feelings about this, as I say, dependent on where you are of your tarot journey, what you know about the animals, and how you feel about the artwork. Coming on to my final point today, this is for those looking to learn or enhance their understanding and studies of animal medicine or behaviour. And when I say medicine, I mean their representative qualities that, as humans, we then sort of mould into divinatory messages and meanings. I personally don't feel that the animals in the everyday and their behaviour and environments are separate from this, but that is just how I work with them. But as a whole, hopefully this last piece will help you to decide how to consider your taste and what makes sense to you. I have split this into a few parts. Essentially, it's how are the animals and the deck structured? What animals are depicted in the deck? And a little add-on is regarding keywords. Animal deck structures vary way more than someone unfamiliar might first assume. The key factors are whether the cults have a set animal or they have different ones. This can also occur in the suits overall, and then how the elements are pulled upon in relationship to the animals. I've pulled out some examples just to show you what I mean. This is Tarot Fauna, and through the suit of shells, the cups, you can see that the minor arcana of the suit all follow otter. And then Oak, Ash and Thorn does something really, really similar. And for their cups, you follow squirrel. And that's through both the quartz and the minor of the suit. And then this is a different example of when the rest of the deck has different animals. This is the Naked Heart Tarot. You can see that they have, for the quartz, grouped the animal together. And here we've got some renames. So this is going for a more family focused father, mother, youth, child. And I think with the quartz or suits, some individuals prefer a set of the same animals and feeling that sense of moving through their story during the cards. People may find it less disjointed or feel it's less intimidating, also as it means that there are less animals in the deck overall. Same with the quartz. Some may feel like the evolutionary aging or the familial connections that may appear in the same set of animals makes the quartz feel more recognisable or familiar to them, especially if the quartz are of close-up or stationary depictions rather than, again, that sort of storytelling display that we have on some other decks. I mentioned previously looking at the elements that are drawn upon regarding the animals, and so what I mean by this is that there are many what are considered obvious elemental associations that are connected to the element that the animal lives in or on, or if they fly. So birds commonly associated with air for the sword suit, anything that lives underwater being in the cup suit, etc. Then you get the representations where it has the animal just because the animal has been placed in there to depict a story, so it's not linked to that element whatsoever. And then the third way, you get the representations where it may require a little more knowledge of the animal. I will give you an example of this. Instead of the octopus being, say, I don't know, 8 of cups, because they're an underwater creature, so cups, water, and they can juggle that many cups. It would be in one of the decks that I am now referencing, maybe them being, say, the Magician card. So it will then take you knowing a bit more about them potentially to see the connection, unless it is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, or they are, again, as I say, in the exact same position as the framework that you're working with. So if it's not depicted in that way and it's reliant on you knowing more about octopus, things such as octopus is very creative in the way they get around, very clever in the way that they hunt for food, they can shapeshift, which is very cool, and they are just amazing contortionists. So I may take all of that information and think, okay, how does that speak to me of the magician energy? So you can see while there's quite a lot more going on in that instance, because I'm already relying on my knowledge of the magician because I'm trying to pull from that, and then I'm pulling from what I understand of octopus. Hopefully that makes sense. And I will get onto books because books can aid you in this, but I really want to help you explore what makes sense to you first, and then we can sort of discuss books. What I'm saying in essence is, if you're going to feel confused by birds flying through the air being depicted on the cup suit, because cups to you is water and that's what you're used to, and it's going to throw you off, then that's fine. Like, this is personal taste, and that matters when we're connecting to a deck, as much as we can assume before actually working with them and trying this. So it's really something worth considering. And then this also extends into where the animals are from. And what I mean by where the animals are from is, and I have 2 examples here. First up, we've got the Brady Tarot. And as far as I understand it, the Brady Tarot, the animal depictions are predominantly all from, at least all seen in Northern America. So if you are familiar and native to the area, of course the cards are all upside down, there we go, then you're going to maybe be potentially more familiar with the animals that you're seeing. The other example is the oak, ash and thorn, and predominantly the animals here are seen across Europe, definitely in the UK at least. So these are animals more native to where I'm from, and if I wasn't someone who was very familiar with lots of animals and did loads of studies and was just a nerd about this stuff, then I might feel more comfortable and more familiar starting out with a deck with animals that I'm familiar with, so that I have a bit of foundation to jump from, that I am not entirely reliant on doing a lot of extra studies, being unfamiliar with their behaviour, their body language, all of those kinds of things. Again, it's not a necessity, but it's just something for beginners, or as I say, dependent on why you're wanting an animal deck, to take into consideration. One of the things that I personally hear a lot of talk about is animals not making sense on certain cards, and I really feel like this is mostly subjective. It does depend to a certain extent on the creator's intention. So again, we're coming back to, did they want to simply put animals in their cards because they really enjoy seeing animals, they really enjoy drawing animals or whatever it is? Or are they pulling on specific behaviours or even myth and story links? That all makes a difference to how the deck's put together. And then of course we've got individual choice. And what I mean by this is animals aren't one-dimensional. And that's something that I talk about a lot. They have many facets. And while we may not see the animal in a certain card or recognise how they link, someone else might have a very clear link to this. They may be aware of a very different aspect of their behaviour that's being called on. And this could be nuance or something less commonly known about the animal, but it doesn't make it wrong. You not liking it or not connecting with it doesn't make it wrong either. And I really feel like that's the beauty of so many animal decks existing, to be honest. Finally, a quick note about how you feel about keywords. So I've got two decks here again. You've already seen the Brady Tarot, and then here I've got the Animal Wise Tarot. But, you know, how do you feel about keywords? And this is just a quick mention, as that question's kind of relevant to any deck. But especially if you're learning more about animals, if you want some guidance or something to jump from, then the words might be really, really welcome to you. Again, not only just because you're learning about the animals, but if you might not choose this deck if you're brand new to tarot as well as animal workings, but you might, and so keywords can be a massive factor in that. There isn't any right or wrong. As I say, this is just a guidance thing, and you can see that this deck, it has more like a statement or several keywords to it. But on the other hand, others can feel boxed in by these. They may feel unable to ignore them as they are visually right there on the cards. And it's just a personal preference along with your particular art tastes. You know, do you want photos? Do you want paintings or lino cuts of the animals? What are you looking for in that sense? What type of cardstock you like? I don't know. The other things that you take into consideration on cards, which I haven't spoken about because I don't need to spoon feed you this stuff, but in regards to the keywords, there are a few animal decks out there with keywords, not as many if you're looking at tarot ones, but it's worth having a think about. Then as a side note, before we finish up, as promised, I wanted to talk about the animal decks that come with incredible guidebooks. If the creator has made something where the animal's behaviour is specifically linked to their card, if it's supposed to be relevant in your understanding the message, then you can find some really intentional books where the reasons and the link to them are discussed. And these again are really helpful for those learning, but also super interesting for all of us, providing the person has done their due diligence and they've fact checked. It isn't a given. Some don't come with guidebooks at all. Some will come with a guidebook, but they have sort of what we call standard box meanings, where the animal isn't really referenced at all. But there are some that come with really, really good ones. And the Animal Totem Tarot is a beautiful example of this, in my humble opinion. The Animal Totem Tarot is a deck that a different animal is depicted in every single card. So there's no set animals in the suits, there's no set cults. There is a lot of behaviour, I feel, going on in the cards. You know, there's no sort of stasis. If there's not really a movement or a behaviour going on, I feel like the scenery and the environment very much adds to the process of most of these cards. It may be more of a not necessarily right off the cusp beginner deck, but you know, I don't want to say that this definitely is or it definitely isn't, because that's not how I feel. Everyone learns differently, and the book will really, really support you with this. And I just want to give you an example. You get a message here from the animal, that's how it's worded, and I guess it's sort of a little story weaving portion of the message. Then you get a write-up here, and this is why I think that this still supports beginners really well as intermediate, or just, as I say, for the joy of reading this book. You've got a breakdown into 3 sections, so it helps you learn how to take the main energy of a card and then weave it into different circumstances. So business and career, family and relationships, health and well-being, and then you get prompts. This book treats every single card in the same capacity. The cards are incredibly well thought out. It's one of the best animal books that I have ever come across. It is a really, really great one, and you can see very quickly why it would add value when you're learning about the animal medicine, or even when you're learning about tarot, to have that combination of guidance coming together. I'm not going to show you the deck again, but another beautiful example of this is the Brady Tarot. And my understanding of this book is that Emmy Brady has given the breakdown. This has never been confirmed, but Emmy Brady obviously curated the deck. It was her vision, everything is essentially hers, and then Rachel Pollock wrote the guidebook, and they had a very close, relationship whilst doing so, in relation of what was put in here. That's my understanding anyway. And often in these first bits you have talk of the animal and any of the key symbols in the cards, which again, it's all very, very intentional. And then you have more of the divinatory tarot message. And so you're going to learn a lot from this book. It's very factual, it's very respectful, and I feel like it's going to give you, again, enough information if you feel comfortable reading the deck in the first place, if you vibe with the artwork. It's obviously not as meaty as Animal Totem, but in terms of just sheer quality, in my opinion, really, really good. I have 2 more examples that have a bit of a different feel to them. The Animal Wisdom Tarot, as I say, it's been renamed, but I'm pretty sure that if you look up the creator and illustrator, you will find the deck still on Amazon. It's like a more condensed version, I want to say, of Animal Totem Tarot in the way that it does it. It's colour coordinated too, which is just nice. But you can see you've got the element, you've got keywords, there's some mention of the animal. I don't feel that necessarily you're going to learn as much about them, but you don't have to. It's not a necessity. You can work with animal decks and know very little about them. I will sound somewhat biased because of my own practice, but I'm generally not trying to be. You can work with them and just in the deck, and that's it, which is why I'm saying to you, consider what it is that you want from said deck. And then Tarot Fauna, which I'm led to understand that when you purchase this, you get a PDF with the deck, or you can print off the guidebook. So it's up to you whether you want the hard copy. And this, again, it doesn't go into the too much sort of, I guess, behavioural or environmental stuff about the animal in particular. But there is explanation of why it draws on them. Here we go, this is the bit I was looking for. So the animals are broken down and you have these keywords with them. And then you've got that to kind of use against why they're in the books, and you've got the suit breakdown again. And that's what I mean. While the books don't all offer the same experience, because obviously the creators didn't intend that, and also they're all very different individuals who read the tarot differently or included the animals for different reasons. These are all really good examples of intentional books where there is a discussion of why the animal is in the card. As I say, even if it's just a brief mention of why foxes were chosen for the wands in this particular deck. And that's all going to be helpful for those people who are learning, or for those who just want something to help them make sense of it all. I feel like that's it from me. I'm hoping this was helpful to those wanting a little supportive guidance. You know, I didn't discuss everything as I wanted to keep it as simple as possible without throwing too much information at you or also showing too many decks. But I felt like these were the key points to help you consider this. And as you can see, animal decks make up the largest portion of my collection. There is a lot of selection out there. Just really think about what is it that first I'm wanting, what am I comfortable with, what makes sense to me. As I say, I've worked with animal medicine before even being aware or familiar with any set tarot system. It is a huge part of my life. Animals as a whole are a huge part of my life, my craft. They are something that I share and teach more of on my Patreon, as well as snippets and mini readings on my Instagram. So if it's something that is calling you or you're wanting to explore it more, my links are always in the video blurb below. Otherwise, I feel like I have covered all I wanted to come and cover today, and I will thank you for hanging out with me. Have a lovely day, and I will catch you all again soon.